silence this. The hell is this? Hello?
What's your favorite scary movie?
John Carpenter's The Thing. Why?
I want to play a little game. The rules are simple. I ask you a question, you get it wrong, you die.
Okay, Jigsaw, take it away.
Name the killer in Friday the 13th.
Pamela Voorhees, Jason's mother. What kind of question is that?
Yes, that's correct. In what year was the original Nightmare on Elm Street released?
1984.
How many Puppet Master movies are there?
13.
Son of a bitch.
Basic bitch questions out of here. Now before I even get into this awesome movie series, I'm going to tell you guys this is actually my first sponsored review, and it is sponsored by the good people over there at Amino. So along with talking about an awesome movie series, I'm going to talk to you guys about an awesome app and an awesome community of people. Just go down below in the link, I have it in the video description below, to download this free app Amino, and it's basically a collection of groups and communities for people to just find other people with the same interests as them. If you like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all that, to find other people that like horror movies or like comic book movies or like the paranormal or photography, tons of different things that you can talk about. You can also find that on Amino. It's a very cool and creative way to get people together. There's polls, there's videos, there's movie reviews, all kinds of cool stuff. I've been kind of looking around in the horror community trying to find a lot of stuff in there. There's a Friday the 13th group, there's a paranormal group, tons of stuff. So if you guys are a fan of social media, you like hooking up with people with the same interests as you, finding different people to, debate movies and talk about your fandom for movies especially, can't find anything better than the Amino app. So check that out down below, guys, please. And being that this is my first sponsored review, I will say, don't worry, my channel is not going to get flooded with a bunch of needless product placements. So have no fear. So Scream tells the story of a group of teenagers who suddenly become targeted by a mysterious killer who is well versed in his horror movies, known as Ghostface. So the original Scream, coming out in 1996, was actually a pretty landmark movie for slashers. This is a movie that came out in a time when slashers especially, but even, the entire genre of horror to a degree, was in a little bit of a stale section as far as creativity. A lot of our slashers, like the big three, Freddy, Michael, and Jason, were pumping out some of their worst sequels in the entire franchise. A lot of other franchises got reduced to direct-to-video, and it just felt like, horror was starting to go down, especially in the slasher genre. And then Scream came back and just brought it back in a huge way and suddenly made slashers big again. This movie was written by Kevin Williamson, who actually, this was one of the first scripts that he wrote that he was trying to sell to big studios when he was kind of a struggling up-and-coming screenwriter. And he wrote this movie as something that he would want to see. He was a fan of horror movies and the old school slashers like I was and like a lot of you are. And whenever it started to get into that stale section in the early 90s and even in the late 80s, he wrote the script as an idea of how to kind of, bring the movie back, bring the slasher back that he wanted to watch, that he missed. And lucky for us, he got an awesome, iconic director like Wes Craven to help him bring this vision to life. And it really did kind of revitalize the slasher genre to a degree. A lot of people would say that, maybe movies tried to be too much like Scream for a while there, and that's certainly a fair argument, but it definitely kind of breathed some new life into a genre that was starting to feel stale by the mid-90s. And just a funny little personal story for myself before I start getting into my pros and cons. This is a movie that, despite how much I really enjoy this series now as an adult, when it first came out in the mid-90s when I was 6 years old, I hated these movies. I did not like them at all. A lot of people would be shocked to hear you say that, being somebody that grew up watching slashers, that I didn't enjoy kind of the premier slasher of my childhood as far as the movies being released around that time. But something about Scream always bugged the shit out of me whenever I was a kid, because my dad let me watch horror movies at a very young age. I think I watched them from like 4 years old onward. I was watching Chucky, I was watching Freddy right before bedtime. I loved the slasher genre, I loved horror movies, And it always felt like this, you know, kind of forbidden thing that only I was a part of. Like all of my friends, my cousins, and everybody my age had no idea what I was talking about. They weren't allowed to watch them or had no interest in watching them or just couldn't handle watching horror movies. It was too scary for them. So when I go around and I tell people about Nightmare on Elm Street or, you know, Child's Play, or start talking about Chucky, or, you know, spitting off lines, you know, like don't fuck with the Chuck. I might have said that once or twice when I was young. But when I started talking about that stuff, it felt like everybody else my age had no idea what I was talking about, didn't even want any part of that conversation. Scream changed all of that. Suddenly when Scream came out, everybody thought slashers was cool, even if they didn't watch slashers. Because they saw Scream and because they wore the ghost face costume at Halloween, suddenly everybody was horror fans, and it drove me insane. I was like, bitch, I'm the real horror fan. I know all the damn movies. I watch Nightmare on Elm Street. I watch Dream Warriors. I watch Halloween. You just watched one fucking movie. You're not a horror fan. So it's always a lot of fun for me to kind of go back and, you know, tell that story and look back at my mindset when I was a young kid. It's kind of like, give me my horror movies. They're mine, you posers. But getting into Scream now, let me go ahead and start off with my pros, as always, the positives of Scream. And I'm going to get the big one out of the gate first because I want to start talking about this. This movie, even though this is not my favorite horror movie of all time, and this is not my favorite franchise of all time, not even close, even though I like them, the opening scene to this movie, the first 10 minutes or so, I think it's the greatest opening to any horror movie ever made. Bar none.
What's that noise?
Popcorn.
You making popcorn?
Uh-huh.
I only eat popcorn at the movies.
Well, I'm getting ready to watch a video.
Really? What?
Oh, just some scary movie.
I seriously struggle to think of any other opening to any other horror movie ever made that just kicks it off with a punch, scares the hell out of you, is so witty and creative and just unique and cool in its execution, and just one of the coolest and most badass, best executed opening sequences that has ever been made, in my opinion.
Stop, leave us alone.
Then answer the question. Same category.
Oh, please stop.
Name the killer in Friday the 13th.
Jason! Jason!
I'm sorry. That's the wrong answer.
From the opening when the phone rings, to the whole thing about going through the trivia game, to the boyfriend's guts being flayed out, to all the way to the person that you would expect to be one of the main stars of the movie, Drew Barrymore, the biggest name on the poster, getting filleted open and hung with her guts spilled out in front of her parents in the first 10 minutes of this movie. Awesome!
No, my daughter. Let's go. No, my daughter.
Call the police.
And that opening scene is the best example of it, but really just the entire movie as a whole. Just the execution of the way that they do the script and the concept of this movie, especially at the time, was just so fresh and unique and smart that it's endlessly enjoyable. I mean, this is a movie that is so self-aware of the horror genre and especially the slasher genre, and the fact that, you know, the killer's kind of toying with his victims regarding movie trivia, and, you know, they're trying to play on horror cliches while trying to subvert all of those cliches. It's just such a smart-ass way to do a slasher movie that it's no question why this movie was so revolutionary for the genre when it first came out in the 90s. There's even subtle ways about how they go about this. I noticed a scene when I rewatched this last night that I don't think I've ever really noticed 100% when I've watched this movie, and I've seen it plenty of times. The first time whenever Neve Campbell's character, Sydney, comes into contact with Ghostface whenever she's on the phone, she's talking about why she doesn't like slasher movies, about, oh, it's insulting. There's always some big-breasted bimbo that, you know, is running up the stairs instead of running out the front door. It's ridiculous. And as soon as Ghostface comes along and she tries to open the door and it's locked, what does she do? So it's just one of those things that it's smart about how it plays with the cliches, but it also kind of reinforces that whole argument about, you know, when people bitch too much about some of the logic in horror movies, oh, I would survive that. I would just run out the door and it'd be easy. Well, if you're in a situation like that in reality, your brain's not going to function exactly how it is when you're watching it on the screen. So I like how they kind of play that out. And I really like the whole cast of this movie too, and all the characters that they play. I mean, it's a very well-rounded cast. A lot of them were people that, pretty much all of them, were actors that were just kind of on the rise when they came into Scream. Some of them might have even been unknown at the time. You look back and you see people like Jamie Kennedy and Neve Campbell and Skeet Ulrich, and you know who all of them are now. But at the time, they were somewhat unknown while also being kind of known within the teenage kind of culture, which is kind of another smart thing that they did is, you know, it's one of the first slasher movies that rounded out its cast with people who were recognizable to the teenage group. It wasn't a bunch of unknowns or, you know, one person that we know like Drew Barrymore and a bunch of people that are just B-movie extras. They actually put a cast in here that will attract teenagers to the movie. But you got so many different characters. You got Stu and you got Billy Loomis, who are kind of like the popular guys and two very different personalities. Stu's kind of the goofball and, you know, Billy's kind of more the quiet, rough around the edges guy. You get Randy, who's probably most people's favorite character in this series, who's the basically us.
Jesus Christ, you don't know the rules?
Have an aneurysm, why don't you?
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. For instance, number 1, you can never have sex. No! Big no-no! Big no!
I'm a dead man.
Sex equals death, okay? Number 2, you can never drink or do drugs.
We're the ones watching the movie. Randy speaks for us, the movie nerd, the horror fanatic, the guy who's just like, there's rules to survive this fucking movie. Do you not understand the simple formula? Gale Weathers, really cool character, really interesting how they kind of have this main character who is not one of the teenagers. She's actually this reporter, this adult who's kind of the outside eyes looking in, who's kind of somewhat speaking for the adults because she sees all these situations, doesn't really believe this. She's trying to, you know, get Cotton Weary off, but she's also trying to see what's going on with the killers and get everybody's statement no matter if they want to or not. Very interesting character, and I love her relationship with our main character, who I'll get into in a second, but you get characters like Dewey, who's just kind of like the goofball, especially in this first movie. He's kind of like the one who's the adult, but he's less than the teenagers. He almost has like this boyish charm that makes him feel like a 12-year-old in a cop outfit. But then you get to our main character, Sidney Prescott, and just like I was talking about the opening scene, again, this may not be my favorite horror movie of all time, and it may not be my favorite horror franchise of all time, but I think Sidney Prescott's the greatest final girl of all time because she is a badass. I mean, you'll see throughout this review series how much more of a badass she becomes, but even in this movie, when she gets to a certain point, when she's not taking any shit anymore, nobody does that better than Sidney Prescott. She's just somebody that whenever she gets tired of the Ghostface bullshit, Ghostface ain't shit. Sidney's gonna whoop their ass. And the whole psychology about, you know, a year prior her mother being butchered to death is something that really makes her an interesting character as well, because she's thrown into this situation and immediately, just because the shit's going on around her in her town of Woodsboro, she's all shook up and she's emotionally screwed up just because it's bringing back demons from her mother's death. So everybody else is just trying to survive. She's trying to survive while also trying to keep her shit together. And I really like how they weave a lot of different things into the execution of this movie. You got some black comedy, you've got straight up slasher horror, you've got, you know, this meta movie trivia side of things that's aware of the slasher genre and all the tropes and all the cliches. They weave all of that in to make a movie that's very entertaining and endlessly rewatchable. I mean, this is a movie that's very dark at times and gets very brutal, especially in that opening scene and a couple other deaths, but it's always fun to watch. It's not really a movie that's trying to scare you, although they do go for some jump scares and some tension, especially in that opening scene. Keep going back to that opening scene, it's awesome. But the black comedy and the meta-ness makes it to where this is a very fun movie to watch, where you can laugh with it, you can enjoy it, you can have a ball watching Scream, even though kids are getting butchered to death. But the aspect of their storytelling that I appreciate the most is because it makes this series very unique, is the fact that every single one of these movies, all 4 of them, are all their own little contained mystery. They're all a whodunit. This isn't like the Nightmare on Elm Street movies where before you even put the movie in, you know Freddy's the killer, or a Halloween movie or a Friday the 13th movie where we know the killer. There's no mystery there. When you put in a Scream movie, every single movie is different because there's always a different killer, there's always a different motive or lack thereof, and you get to go on this journey of trying to figure out, along with our main characters, who the hell Ghostface is every single time. And it's a very cool and fresh aspect to bring to a slasher movie, because with so much franchise potential that they knew they had when they made this movie, they didn't go the route of having like one guy who always comes back, you know, Ghostface is getting out of prison, now he's coming back for you. No, it's always somebody else that's trying to copycat or trying to take up the mantle or trying to finish what the other guys started but couldn't. Very cool aspect to not only have a killer like Ghostface who's an icon, but he's always somebody different, but also just the viewing experience of the movie viewer of a different mystery to unfold every time. And I've always loved the look of Ghostface too. There's no question why this became like the most popular Halloween costume ever in the 90s. Like every single year you saw more Ghostface out there. I remember the year that I decided to be Ghostface, I was like one of 7 Ghostface in my class and I was pissed about it. But the simplicity of the Ghostface costume, just a black robe that's almost like this Grim Reaper ghost thing, plus the ghost face itself, is just so unique but simple that it works. You know, even to the point where, you know, there's people that I've seen that like the TV series Scream mask a little bit more. I'm not really one of them, but I haven't even watched the TV show to be fair. But the simplicity of that Ghostface mask is where it really gets me, is where it just, this blank slate, but also has a little bit of goofiness to it where it's almost like a melted ghost. I love the look of it. And as my final positive for Scream, I will say as kind of a bookend for praising that opening scene so much, I think the third act of this movie kicks major ass. It's a third act that not only really heightens up the tension and everything because of the villain reveals, but also because of this party where basically everybody leaves to go check out Henry Winkler. You know, Fonzie's hanging out over there with his guts, let's go check him out. Everybody leaves and you just have kind of some of our main characters left for Ghostface to dispatch of, and he's dispatching people left and right. You don't know who's dead or who's gonna come back, and it switches around the red herring so much, especially in that third act, that you just don't know where the hell the movie's going. But when you finally get to the killer reveal of Billy Loomis and Stu, from that point on, the movie is just nuts.
Corn syrup. Same stuff they use for pig's blood in Carrie.
Help me, please.
Surprise, Sydney.
Whenever it's unfolding their plan and they're doing the whole villain monologue, telling exactly how they planned it, what they're about to do, what they're gonna do after Sydney is butchered and hung from somewhere else in the house, but also just the motivations of the killers. Because there was this debate when they were making this movie at Dimension, whenever they had, you know, they pitched the idea and they said, look, we don't know if we need to have a motivation for these killers or if it's scary to have no motivations. And every time they talked about it, the panel they were talking to was split. Half the people thought a motivation was good, half the people thought that no motivation was better. So they did both. You got Billy Loomis, who has this, you know, mother abandonment mentality where his mom left because Sidney's mom was sleeping with his dad, and it has this nice little tie-in to the whole psychology of Sidney Prescott being, you know, messed up from her mother being murdered, and it also calls back and gives an identity to the killer of her mother, which is a really cool callback. But then you get to Stu, and Stu is just like, peer pressure.
Watch a few movies, take a few notes. It was fun.
And not only is it just crazy, but as far as going back to that black comedy thing, I think what Matthew Lillard does is genius in the third act of this movie. Because he's a character that's a little bit off the whole movie, but whenever he's unleashed and he's, you know, identified as one of the killers, his comedy is just on fucking point at the end of this. It makes me crack up every single time.
I'm gonna rip you up, you bitch! Just like your fucking mother!
You gotta find me first, you pansy-ass mama's boy.
Fuck! Fucking hit me with the phone, dick! Fucker, where are you? Ah! Ah, you fuck!
Did you really call the police?
You bet your sorry ass I did.
My mom and dad are gonna be so mad. Ah!
But with all that being said, there are a couple of things about Scream that even so many years later still bug me quite a bit, so let's get into those. First and foremost, I will say that as unique and as fresh and as smart as this movie is in the writing and the execution and how it subverts expectations by subverting some of the tropes while also playing into those tropes and all that great stuff that they do, in my opinion, aside from that opening scene, the kills in this movie are extremely underwhelming because, you know, and it's honestly something I'll say for the entire franchise going forward for the most part, so expect to hear me say this again, but just the kills in Scream are so basic. It's just, you know, stabs to the gut, stabs to the gut, stabs to the back, stabs to the shoulders. It's just, there's not really anything overly creative or unique about the kills, and the only kill that they really try to be unique with in this movie, the garage door kill, I hate that kill because it makes absolutely zero sense in any way imaginable that that would be possible for a garage door opener to have that much power to lift a body enough to actually crush the neck. Some people say you think too much into it. I don't think so. I think this movie is grounded enough to where that kill is really sticking out like a sore thumb as stupid. And really, if I was to make a Scream film myself, or if they were to do another one and they were asking like, hey, what's something that we need to do? That would be the first thing that I would say is make some creative kills. Like make the kills in this movie stand out and make them like hallmark kills to where if you see like top 20 slasher kills of all time, 1 or 2 of the ones that you put in that movie will be on that list. To me, none of the kills in the Scream franchise would be on that list. As far as specific characters, I do like all the characters in this movie, but there's one character in particular that's really only in this first film that I dislike this character just because of the way that the actor portrays him. I'm not a fan of Dewey. You know, what David Duchovny, woo, wrong actor, David Arquette. What David Arquette brings to the character of Dewey, even though I understand it's for goofiness and it's for, you know, a little bit of that comedy aspect and making it a little bit more lighthearted, he's just such an off character to me, especially that they have this budding romance a little bit in this first movie between him and Gale. I don't buy into it at all. I don't see any female being attracted to that man-child. As far as one specific scene that I never realized how much I disliked this scene until I rewatched it last night, so I'm glad I rewatched it before doing this review. The scene in the high school bathroom, when Sydney's in the bathroom kind of hiding, listening to the teenage girls talk shit about her, and then she comes out and she keeps hearing this, you know, weird voice saying her name, and then suddenly Ghostface boots come out into view from underneath the stall, and he just jumps out of the door to try to stab her, and she runs out of the high school, and then it cuts to some other scene. That scene is so ridiculous to me, because aside from just the logic of how did he know that she was going to go into that bathroom, and then he planned it out long enough to go and hide in the bathroom, and it's the whole execution of that scene makes no sense to me. Not only that, but what's he going to do? He's going to stab her and then leave, or he's just trying to scare her? What if she runs out of the bathroom and says, the killer's in there, and everybody groups around? Now you're fucking caught because you're the only person in the bathroom and you have a high school full of teachers that are right there to see you. Makes no sense to me. But ironically enough, this scene is actually something that was debated between Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson, which I found out just by reading Wikipedia, so it's gotta be true. Kevin Williamson didn't like that scene. He wanted it removed. He didn't like it, didn't like the way that it executed or anything like that, didn't like how it played out. Wes Craven made it to where it stayed in. He said that it kind of fleshed out her character more with her relationship with her mother, which, fair enough, I guess. If you would have cut it off at the point of the girls leaving the bathroom, I'd agree with you. But it's just funny enough to me that even Kevin Williamson, after the movie came out, said, hey, Wes, you were right, that scene's great. No, it wasn't. Kevin, you should have stuck to your guns. But my final negative for this, as much as I love the whodunit aspect, and as much as I feel like in some parts of this movie they do very well with putting a lot of different red herrings out and making it to where everybody's a suspect, just like Randy said, everyone's a suspect. I don't feel like, for my own personal view, they did a very good job at hiding the identities of the killers. Now, I'm probably one of the very few minority people that will say that, because I know a lot of people love the reveal of Billy and Stu. To me, Billy and Stu, throughout this entire movie, always felt like creeps.
How do you gut someone?
You take a knife and you slit them from groin to sternum. Hey, it's called tact, you fuck rag.
They're the only characters that feel like creeps. I mean, when you have that scene in the video store with Randy and Stu's just kind of like hanging out behind Randy, he's got this weird look in his face, and then, you know, Billy Loomis is getting real, you know, gruff, and you're talking to him really low, like, yeah, motherfucker, don't even talk about me again, you don't know me. Like, just that scene alone is enough. But there's other scenes where those two characters, you know there's something fucked up about them. So I always pointed as at least one of those guys as being the killer. And even the surprise about having two killers, I feel like they kind of played their hand a little bit. Maybe about 2/3 of the way through the movie. I don't remember the specific scene, but there's a scene when Ghostface shows up in a door and she locks it and she runs away, and then suddenly Ghostface is there again, where I was like, that's gotta be two people. And the motherfucker doesn't teleport. So just to me, the whole execution of keeping the identity of the killers wasn't that great of an execution in this movie. Still fun, still great, doesn't take away from the fun of this movie at all, and I love the third act, how it plays out when they get into the motivations. Still love all that stuff, but I knew who the killers were from the beginning when I saw this, even back in 1996. There's just something off about those two fucking guys. But overall, guys, I'm glad that I finally came around at some point in my life to really enjoying this original movie especially, but the whole franchise of Scream. I really like this franchise a lot. It's not my favorite slasher franchise of all time, obviously. You guys know that's Nightmare and Child's Play, but I really enjoy Scream. I enjoy what it brought to the slasher genre, and it's a movie that I always have a good time talking about and always have a good time rewatching. So if you're a horror fan or especially a slasher fan and somehow you have not seen the original Scream, please get out from underneath that rock you're living under and check this out, because this is one of the most fun slasher franchises that you can get into and experience. So please check this thing out, go out and buy it. So what do you guys think of Scream? Are you a fan of this franchise? Did you have that same little kind of bit of horror fan selfishness that I did in 1996, or have you always loved this series? What's your favorite Scream movie, and are you looking forward to the reviews of Scream 2, 3, and 4? Tell me down below, guys. Be sure to check out that Amino app. Like I said, down in the video description below, I'm gonna have the link where you can download this thing. It's a lot of fun, and check that thing out, especially the horror community. A lot of cool stuff going on in there. If you guys, please like and share this video, hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. If you want to check out some of my social media links, those are also in the video description below. I got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Spreadshirt for Cody Leach merchandise, and my Patreon page, which is a great way to give back to this channel, help it grow, and get cool exclusive content for your eyes only. So check that out, guys. And if you want to check out some more of my videos, you can check out a few more by clicking right over here.